based out of upstate New York, associate professor at Rochester Institute of Technology, where he teaches in the College of Art and Design. And most importantly, he has a new book coming out, which we're going to be covering today, How to Be a Design Student and How to Teach Them. This is going to be a little bit different than previous events. There's no formal presentation, no screen sharing. It'll just be a candid conversation with Mitch. So if anyone has any questions, by all means, unmute yourself. Feel free to, there is no interrupting, so just unmute yourself. Feel free to talk over someone, you know how that goes. And if you don't want to do that, you could also type your questions into the chat, and either I could read them or Mitch could read them.
So we'll see if this is a hot mess or not. It's going to be something.
All right, awesome.
Yeah, but Christian, thank you for having me here. It's great to see everybody. Yeah, I'm honored to be here. I love the Chicago, like no bullshit. I love the Chicago design community. I've been out there many times. I know a bunch of people there. It's like my favorite big city. Great. So I'm honored to be here.
Good to hear. So just right off the bat, first question, you have a new book coming out. And you have your copy. I saw you posted a photo of your copy there.
Ooh, book. Yes, and you all have to buy this. Yeah. Actually, you all have to buy 10 copies. That would be even better. But at least one would be cool. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what led up to the book. What were some of the
So it's like a really interesting story. So as I think probably most of you know, I have sort of a Twitter account of some, I guess now it would be notoriety. Back in the day, it was just popular, but now that Twitter is evil, we're sort of over that. And so having, done all my little Mitchisms online, I got a message from Paul Wagner, who is the design director at Princeton Architectural Press, just a DM saying, hey, Mitch, I'm, with a publisher. We really like what you're saying. I don't remember the exact wording. We like what you're into. We like what you're talking about. We'd love to talk to you about a book. And my first thought is, okay, who is this teasing me? Like, who is playing a joke on me right now? And then I realized it was actually Paul, and it was legit. And my message back was, oh my God, that's incredibly flattering. I'd love to talk to you, but you should know I have literally no comprehension of writing. Like, I am not the guy to write a book. Mm-hmm. He said, it's cool, we'll talk. You're not the first person to say that. And so I went out to, their offices are in Hudson Valley, and so in upstate New York. So I went out and met with Paul and Jennifer Thompson, who's I think she's the chief editor or the managing editor. And we had a lunch and sort of just had a talk about me doing this book. And I was like, well, obviously I'm going to do that. Like clearly there's no version of this chat that ends in me saying, no, I'm not interested. Like, of course I'm interested. But I said, I'm a little concerned about really executing this. And is this, is my voice what you want? And they said, absolutely. We want this to be, your voice. This is not like, we're not envisioning like an academic text with footnotes. And I said, good, because I'm not the guy to write that. They said, really, it's just sort of your thoughts on page. We like what you say on Twitter. We want to see more. And I said, that's great. I mean, obviously I would love to do that. And as I think back of it now, that email from Paul was at like 2018. And it is now 2023, and it is being published next month. And it's just like amazing how long it took to kind of get rolling. Part of it was me feeling a little kind of worried about it, getting the contracts back and forth. It's a long process. But I think I signed contracts, I can't quite remember the day. It was like, I think in like 2021-ish, 2020, 2021, that whole past 3 years, like for all of you, is just like a blur of stress. And I wrote the book, and it took about 1.5 years of me writing. And really what it took was 1.5 years of me watching Netflix and then rewatching Netflix and then saying, I should write my book, and then watching something else on the internet. And at some point I got to writing it. And it's been an amazing process. It's really been incredible. They've been great over at Princeton Architectural Press. I think Chronicle now officially owns them. They were always in partnership, but I think Chronicle now owns them officially. And it was an amazing process. It was really interesting. It really helped me as an educator, as a maker, as someone who's currently a student, really like solidify. I think it helped me solidify my pedagogy in a way that I'm accountable for now, which is great. Like people, I mean, I hope people are going to read this book, and I am sure people are going to have thoughts. Mm-hmm. And I hope those thoughts are mostly good, but I'm anticipating some of them being, this is bullshit. Who let you write this? And I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is, yeah, it's a book, like whatever. Like, I don't want whatever. Like, this is very much my voice on the page.
Yeah.
And as people have started to get to read some advanced copies, they're like, yeah, this is you. And that's really what I was looking for. I wanted it to be real. I wanted it to be authentic. I think that whatever, I hate to even, I'm saying the words and I want to throw up, whatever influence I have, I think comes from a place of genuine honesty and not me sort of posing. And so I was really concerned about that coming through. And I believe it did. Like, I believe it is a pretty authentic, voice of what I think. And ultimately, obviously it's for design students. I think it's good for design students' parents who are like, what is design school? Do you just learn, Photoshop, which is obviously not all we do. I think it's for students who are maybe in it and kind of not getting as much out of it as maybe they hoped they would be getting. Hopefully that the book can help there. And really it's for teachers and educators and people who teach this and aren't sort of coming in, cashing a paycheck and leaving, but are in it, are really doing it, right? And are really thinking about what they're doing, really thinking about their pedagogy, really thinking about how they kind of run their class. And I hope it helps them as well. It's called How to Be a Design Student, but it's definitely, there's parts of each chapter directed directly at educators.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we're at. Yeah.
So when did you start writing, in 2018?
I would say I started actually writing the book, like physically sitting down and writing words in like 2021. Okay. I handed in the early 21. I remember New Year's Eve, 2021 into 22, I handed the manuscript in. Mm-hmm. Like, I emailed them the quote completed manuscript. My deadline was in January. I'm like, I want this done by the New Year's Eve. So you guys were all out having fun. I was like spell checking my document. Yeah. And so I handed it into them end of the year 2021. And then all of 22 is like production, all of the spring into the summer. And then it went to press. I can't quite remember. I'm a little loose on this, but like over the summer, like July, August, overseas, and then got back to the States in physical form. The container came back to the States early January. And so now it is in warehouses. It is probably in the back rooms of some bookstores waiting to be put on the shelves on March 7th. At least that's my fantasy, that there's like a Mitch section with just all these books. And yeah, so it's a crazy long process. And once it's just like design, right? You hand it in and it's collaborative. It's not just, I made this perfect jewel, don't touch it. It's a lot of back and forth, which is really good. Jennifer and some of the other editors at Princeton were phenomenally helpful and just helping me kind of shape what I'm talking about and make sure that what I'm saying is what I'm saying and not I'm saying what I think I'm saying. I'm actually saying it. So that was incredibly valuable, super, super useful. They allowed me to design it, which was great. I got to do the cover and the interior, and it was an amazing experience. And I hope people are into it. I hope at least a certain amount of people are into it. And it's fine if some aren't. It's no problem. But I'm hoping it's good. I hope people like it.
Yeah, and something that I've always, ever since I came across you and your work and your Twitter accounts, is that you always drop these little bits of wisdom. Have you always done that?
Boy, that's a good question. So my Twitter background, this could be a long story. My Twitter background started out as me doing Twitter with like 15 followers and nothing. And it was kind of not into it. I didn't get it. This was in like late 2000s. So 2007, 8, 9, in that kind of ballpark. I don't quite remember when Twitter launched, but it was fairly soon after. And I was just tweeting and not really, I was like, I'm having a latte. I'm at Starbucks. It was kind of nothing interesting. And then I kind of had this idea, and this is when Mad Men was on TV. And everybody on the planet was super into Mad Men. And so I had this idea of what if like Paul Rand was like a super drunk, pissed off, like ad guy. Like that would be funny. And so I made this account called Angry Paul Rand, which none of you probably remember, but maybe a couple of you do. And it just hit. And it was all sorts of like, I had a martini and Kern some type. And it was dumb shit like that. But it was funny, It was like just picturing like Paul Rand drunk and pissed off at his interns, kind of like that was the account, And at the time when this happened, it hit like 15,000 followers, which at the time was like the top like 0.1 percentile for Twitter. It was insane, absolutely insane. It was on the front page of Twitter when that used to be something that mattered. And it just kind of exploded in a way. I was like, this is not what I was planning on happening here. And at some point, I remember tweeting something. I honestly cannot remember what it was. I can't remember who the person was, but I tweeted something out, and this person sort of, respectfully, but very directly was like, that's not true. Like kind of like you're calling shit on me. And I remember thinking, I don't feel good like being this anonymous entity, like being funny, but then people are really like reading this and like, I don't know if they're taking it seriously, but they're taking it with some seriousness that this person knows what they're talking about. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like, that's not fun to be this anonymous non-entity, like insulting people. It just wasn't fun anymore. And so I sort of quit that, started my own Twitter account, again, just very being Mitch, and it just kind of blew up. And at some point, I think I was in graduate school at VCU at the time, I sort of came out as Angry Paul Rand. And 10 people cared. Most people could not care less. But it was like, oh, okay, cool. I get it. Yeah, that sounds about right. And so I think what I did was I sort of took the directness of the Angry Paul Rand account, my own empathy and sort of caring for the industry and the students I teach, and it kind of mashed together into what became my own voice as a Twitter account. Because really the Angry Paul Rand account was me. Mm-hmm. It was just fake, older, drunk me in a way. And so that became my Twitter account, and it just grew over time. It was not like, how am I going to strategize? I wasn't like buying followers. It just grew just organically. And I found the more honest I was, the more real I was, the more upfront I was about my struggles being a designer, struggles being a person, depression, anxiety, just all the shit that you deal with as a person. The more upfront I was about it and the more honest I was about it, it made me feel better because it was sort of a little, not like therapeutic, but it was like, yeah, we're all in this. Everybody gets these weird moments in their career. And I think it just kind of resonated for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm still not entirely sure I deserve all the attention, but I appreciate it and I'll take it. It's great for my ego. But that's kind of just how it became. And I learned real quick that me trying like really hard to be clever was not great. Me trying really hard to be like profound was also not great. It was clearly like, dude, just let's pump the brakes. Like we get what you're trying to do. And I realized the more honest I was with who I was and what I cared about, the better it was. And it became valuable for me. I think that most of my tweets were to me first and then to everybody else. Like they were directed at myself so I could kind of like get my shit together. But the fact that it resonates with other people is obviously an incredible feeling. And, that validation, I'm not going to lie, is awesome. Like I'll take it. Yeah. And that's what it was. And it just became me sort of being, funny, but like honestly funny, like legitimately funny with kind of what's going on. And I think it's good because I think there's so much, the design community. I mean, there's lots of amazing people, but there's certainly some arrogance and some sort of fluffing of importance in that kind of reality. And I was like, I don't want to be that person. Like, I don't want to be the guy who's like, yeah, we're saving the planet by kerning well. Like, we're not. I picked purple. Less people don't die because I picked purple on this magazine spread. But that doesn't mean we're not doing stuff that's important. But I think we got to like calm down our egos a little bit. Let's like tone it down a tiny bit and be a little more realistic. And that's kind of where I am. And then unfortunately now Twitter is dead, so it kind of doesn't matter anymore. But it was cool for a while, Well,
I mean, I think your presence has now sort of taken over Instagram because I always see quotes being reposted all the time. And I think something that I really admire about you is that you do talk about like the human side of being a designer, mm-hmm. and you do a lot of posts around like just self-care and balance and wellness. And I think unfortunately that's not something that is always really talked about in our industry.
Yeah.
So to hear you, post what you post sort of validates, I think, not only like how I feel, but also I'm imagining how other people feel. And that's probably why so many people connect with you.
Oh, and that's my hope. My hope is that it's resonating. That's the word I like to use. It doesn't mean you agree. It doesn't mean I'm like altering how you run your life. Please do not take my advice on how to run your life. But I do hope people are like, oh, right. Yeah. Okay. Got it. That for me is great. That's all I'm hoping for. Just that connection. And that if I can illuminate a little bit, if I can make people feel slightly less stressed out, if I can kind of let them laugh at themselves a little bit, that's amazing. Like that's an incredible feeling. And I'll take it every day. Like it's great.
Yeah.
But I learned real quick what I don't want to be is like mean. It's just, I'm good. Like, I don't want to do that. It's just not me.
Got it.
I mean, I might be slightly snarky on occasion, but I don't want to be a dick. There's enough shit going on. I'm good. I don't need to add, let's try to elevate a little bit.
Yeah. And is your book, like how much of it was inspired by the pandemic?
I don't, that's actually a really good question. I think the way the pandemic shook out, it was like of a very interesting timing. that a lot of stuff happened. I sort of broke up with my former partner and wife right before the pandemic. I obviously moved into my own place during the pandemic. I received tenure right before, kind of near before the pandemic. I started really writing the book in the pandemic. And so I don't know if the pandemic is in the book. I think I might make an offhand reference one time. But I do think that like having to sort of sit with myself a lot, as we all did, on Zoom, right? The timing was kind of auspicious. Like it was interesting timing that it forced me to sit down, and I can't be like, oh, I got to run to class because my class is a mouse click. I'm teaching online today. And so it kind of helped me like dial in the process of writing, which is not something I'm great at. So it was useful. I mean, it was off. Obviously it was bad. For me personally, there was sort of a little bit of value to it, only in that it was the isolation kind of helped a little bit. Like you hear about writers, Hemingway, whoever, they get a hotel room in some no-name hotel in the middle of nowhere for a month and write a book. And I get it. Like I understand why people do that, because it is nice to just be like, everything go away. I've got to hit 5,000 words this week or whatever the number is.
Got it. Yeah. Interesting. And right now I saw you post the other day about taking breaks from, I believe like you do woodwork.
Yep.
And like furniture design. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's exactly right.
And you posted about how you just needed to take a break from sort of like everything that you were doing, what you were working on. And a question that I always run into when I see people like yourself that are doing a lot and that are really inspirational and that are teaching and that are creating and doing all of these things, I often just I wonder how everything is in balance and sort of how you navigate through.
Not well. I would say very poorly. The furniture, oh boy, that's a big question. I don't know if I balance my life very well. And people are always like, oh, how you're getting another master's degree? How do you do that? As I talk to them with like 3 kids and a dog, and it's like, I don't have 3 kids. I'm single. I can do whatever I want. Like my obligations are sort of to myself and obviously to my job. And that's it, And so that's the other thing I don't like, is this sort of like toxic comparisons, like, between these people who have like 40-year careers and you're like a 21-year-old who just graduated and you're like, I'm never going to be as good as this designer who's been doing it for 30 years. It's like, call me in 30 years and we'll see where you're at. And so people look at me like that and I'm like, I don't think I'm the guy you should be looking at for like how to pull this off, because I do not know if I'm pulling it off. But yeah, it's been really interesting. I really love the medium of like wood and sort of dimensional work. I've obviously worked flat for years and years and years. I really like wood as a material. I think furniture is a really fascinating sort of moment in sort of physical form, is really cool. And I think that for me, getting to figure out how to approach my previous work into a format that doesn't really respond well to it, like it's really hard to do sort of loose, messy woodworking. You can do loose, messy woodworking and cut your face off, or, like make a piece that doesn't stay together. That's easy. But to do, quote, good, proper woodworking or furniture in this very sort of gestural kind of way, that messy way I like to work, was really hard. And that post that you're referencing, which was probably in December, when I was just like, I need a break. Like I was just like, I had a rough review. I was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing? Like, why am I even doing this? I don't need another master's. Like, there's no need for this other than my own curiosity. And like 2 days later, something just kind of clicked. And I like figured something out about my work. And I was like, oh, that's what I'm doing. And now I feel fantastic.
Yeah.
And I kind of think that like, that like driving up the hill and then you get right to the cliff, and you kind of have to do that, or else you're going to kind of stay down in the bottom and it's going to be sort of okay. But I think to sort of transcend into something really interesting, you sort of have to have that oh shit kind of realization about your work to some extent. And so for me, it came at like, I would say last possible second. Like it was really like right at the end of my time. And after that, I made like 4 pieces over winter break, which was awesome. And so I started just cranking, and it was really good. And I think my work changed a lot, and I'm like super hyped about what it's doing right now. And so that was really useful. But I think people look at me like, oh yeah, you know what you're doing. I'm like, no. I like what I'm doing. I'm excited about what I'm doing, but I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just doing. And with the understanding that not knowing isn't necessarily a requirement. Like knowing what I'm doing is not necessarily something I have to start with. And so that's been fascinating. And so it's been an amazing experience. I used to say, hopefully if I graduate, but now I feel reasonably confident that I'm going to be okay for thesis. It's an incredible opportunity to get to do it. RIT is an amazing institution. The fact that I can take these classes for free and basically just pay for wood and tools it's unreal. It's an unbelievable opportunity. And honestly, I know this isn't really true, but in the back of my head, I'm like, dude, you would be a jerk to not do this. Like you can do this and you are in a place in your life where you actually physically can do it. Like you have time and you have enough sort of lack of distraction where this is something you could do. And I hemmed and hawed a little bit and I'm like, no, like this is an incredible opportunity. Of course I'm going to do that. And so I did it and I'm doing it, as it were.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been amazing. Very difficult, but amazing.
Yeah. I love it. There's a question in the chat from Laura. So she says, I just completed my MFA in December and I'm hoping to be a design instructor. I took an adjunct position this spring, but hoping to make the leap to full-time. Do you have any advice for making that jump or anything you would like, or anything you would include in your teaching philosophy? Do you have any advice you wish you knew as you started out as an instructor? That's
a good question. First, I would buy my book. No, I'm sorry. So I think you're doing it right. Like you starting out adjunct, starting out part-time, I think is actually super good idea because it lets you figure out if you actually want to do this. Like it's not the theory of teaching. It's you're in the room for a semester with students and you're responsible. So I think that is a phenomenal decision to start teaching adjunct. I know a lot of people are like, yeah, I think I'm going to get a degree to teach. And I'm like, oh, where have you taught? And they're like, I haven't taught yet. And I'm like, you might want to try it. You just want to make sure it's for you. So that's awesome. Like, yes, do that. The honest reality of education in art and design is that there has to be a position that exists available. The days of, oh yeah, I know you. Yeah, here's a tenured job. Like here, come on in. Those don't exist anymore. Everything is through committees and it takes 6 or 8 months to sort of go through the process. And so you have no option but to do that, which means you have no option but for a job to exist. So the first thing you have to do is really pay attention to Chronicle of Higher Education. I think I'm like Academic Keys. There's a few of them out there looking for jobs. Then you need to have all of your materials together, all of your resume together, your CV together. You should have a teaching philosophy together. You should have a research statement ready to go. You should have sort of a diversity statement or an inclusivity statement ready to go. You should have your own portfolio ready to go. You should have your student work in a portfolio ready to go. And so being prepared, just being like ready to go when you see an opportunity is kind of thing number 2. And thing number 3 is to just keep teaching. So you might not get the full-time gig next semester or next year or the year after, but if you're constantly in the classroom, even if it's just one class a semester at one school, that shows someone who's looking to hire that you're in it, because we all understand adjuncts get paid essentially nothing. It's practically slave labor. It's absolutely ridiculous how little we pay adjuncts, but let's not even go down there. So if you're teaching adjunct for more than one semester, then clearly you care. Like it would show me as someone hiring that you're in it, and that's great. And so I think you just got to keep going and keep looking and keep paying attention, and really your pedagogy, how you teach, how you think about the classroom, how you think about critique, you will develop all of that over time. And you already have developed some of it, whether you realize it or not. Like you have a pedagogy. You might not have written down yet, but you have it. And so I think like recognizing that, like, what am I doing? Oh, I do like that. I don't like that. I do believe in this idea. I don't believe in that idea. I think that helps a lot. And so just kind of paying attention, taking a lot of notes, really when you're teaching, thinking about, okay, what worked today? Oh, that did work. That didn't work. And you're just sort of developing like an approach, I guess. I mean, pedagogy is like an official word, but I would just call it your approach, how you sort of vibe with the class and what you're doing. So to me, what you're saying is you're doing everything right. Like I would look at what you're doing and say, yes, keep going, and just hope there's a job that fits you and you fit them. And, you know, it's just like any other job, right? You've got to want the job, but they also have to want you. And that is just a process. And unfortunately in academia, that is a process that is like months long. It's not a 3-week back and forth. It's like a 4-month back and forth. And you just have to be ready to be patient. But other than that, I would say you're cranking. Keep going.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep.
And I also recently started teaching, and one of the things that I've noticed that when I have my one-on-one with my students is that a lot of them, when I just ask them how they're just doing in general, and how they're balancing class and all that type of stuff, the majority of them just feel very overwhelmed. Yep. and just stressed out, anxious, all that type of stuff. And a part of me feels a little bit guilty that I'm like contributing to just all of that chaos. So how do you how do you deal with that in the classroom?
Well, that's a really good question. And to your last point, I think that when you sign up to go to design school, you sort of sign up for that. Okay. Like that's part of it. Part of it is you're going to have projects, you're going to be under pressure. Like that's college, right? Yeah. Like I think you should be kind of ready for that when you go to college. But I agree with you. I have found, and I think any other teachers on this call or anybody who's a student would agree, the level of stress and anxiety has skyrocketed since 2020, justifiably so. I know this has been said, this isn't news, I'm not inventing anything, but like we all went through a trauma, like a legitimate trauma, not a, ooh, it was hard. Like we are all experiencing post-traumatic stress to some extent. And what I have found is the students, they have all of the normal pressure of college, 5 classes, 3 or 4 projects going at once, liberal arts going. They have all the pressure of sort of being in a strange place. Most of them are, freshmen like sleeping next to a stranger you don't know in like a cinder block room in a dorm, which is awkward to say the least. They're also dealing with all of the new social environments. Some of them have never been away from home. Some of them have never lived alone by themselves, and so now they're dealing with all of that stuff. And then you add on top of it, this kind of feeling the world is exploding a little bit. It isn't, we're fine, but it sort of feels like it's imploding or exploding or some kind of ploding. And it just like the layers of stress have built up to a point where I find students are out of their minds right now. So the problem with that is part of me wants to be like, guys, this is art school, calm down. It's not this is not a life or death thing we're doing here. We're not in med school. We're not learning to, do anything where someone's going to die if you screw up. I mean, yes, technically, if you make something unreadable, but you know what I'm saying. It's not like a life and death dialogue. So like, calm down. But at the same time, kind of hope people don't take this the wrong way. I'm kind of over calming down. I think it's been a few years. I know COVID is not over. I know we're in it still. It's not done. But this is sort of life now. Like, this is kind of where we are at. At some point, will COVID just become a flu shot? I think so, I guess. I am perfectly honest. I'm not paying attention to the news anymore because I just cannot deal. Straight up, I just can't handle it. But all of these pressures, like, just layer and layer and layer and layer. And as much as I want to tell people everything's cool, don't stress, this is a difficult profession. It's a competitive profession, graphic design, design in general. And you having a rough day is legitimate, but the clients don't generally care. Doesn't mean they don't care at all. They do care. They're humans, but they don't really care. They're not your friends. They're your clients. They're in a relationship, a business relationship with you. And so I think as educators, part of our responsibility is to get students ready to deal with that once they go into professional practice. I hate that term, the real world. I call it into practice. Because the reality is, I don't feel so great. I'm a little anxious. I'm not coming into studio today. That's how you don't pay your rent. Like, you can't really do that. I mean, you can do it once in a while, but you can't be like that in professional practice. Whereas in school, we're all so uptight about everything. We're worried about people having really rough times that we're trying to not make it more stressful. It kind of should be stressful. It is stressful. It's stressful for me, and I'm teaching, like, I don't have any tests or anything, and it's stressful for me. And so I kind of think what's happening right now, maybe a little more in the next fall, is we're sort of coming back up to the level of like intensity that I think we need to be at, which I think is really good. I think we're doing it very gently, which is good. I can only speak for myself. I am paying a lot of attention to my students' mental health. I'm asking them and looking at their eyes, like, how are you doing? And looking at how they react to that question and taking it really seriously. And I tell my students, like, if I am worried about you, I have got no problem making a phone call. Whether you think that's an invasion of your privacy or not, I don't care. I care more that you're okay than that you're pissed off I called student services on your behalf. And I've had students be irritated at me with that initially, and then later were like, thank you, like I needed it. So I have learned that I'm willing to be that guy. And so it's a really tough question. Like I know I'm babbling right now. Like I don't know how to answer it because part of me wants to be like, COVID doesn't exist. Let's get back to it, which is not true. And then part of me wants to be like, yeah, like this is where kerning, like we're not saving lives here. Like, let's all just calm down a little bit. And I don't know what the answer to that is, Christian. I mean, really, I'm torn. It's frustrating for me as a teacher because I know the students could do better, but they also have this reality they're living in that's just so unfair to them. And especially students who are like sort of freshmen, sophomores who essentially spent the end of high school on Zoom and now are coming to college. And because we're sort of back in person, it is like a very intense change. From people who are basically just showing up to Zoom and sort of getting marked abs, present because your face was there, maybe not having to perform as much as they used to. And now it's like, welcome to college, go, be ready, and your whole life is consumed by it. And it is challenging. Like it is very challenging.
And what are some like tactics or methods that you incorporate into your classroom to sort of make it be that safe space where there's vulnerability and
I think I do a lot of stuff. First of all, I think I'm very approachable, just generally speaking. I hope people don't think I'm intimidating. I think I'm like the least intimidating person on the planet. Like I try to be very approachable. I know it sounds really silly, but me like posting on Instagram or formerly on Twitter, like, hey, I'm in the middle of this project, or look at what I did, or, oh, I screwed this joint up. I think it shows the students that like I'm in it with them. Like I'm not joking. I'm not like, oh yeah, you guys, I'm literally a student right now. And even when I'm done with this degree, I will still be having a creative practice. So I think that them seeing me struggle helps. I don't struggle intentionally for them, but it does help because they're like, oh, well, this guy theoretically knows his shit, but look at him losing it too. Maybe that's how this works. And I'm like, yeah, that is how it works. Like that is what this is. So that's a really important piece of it, is me being very transparent with my own struggles. Again, on Twitter, or even in the classroom, I'm always talking about how I mess something up or whatever. So that's really important. I think that respecting students and treating them like adults is really important. I have never and will never refer to students as a kid. I have a piece in my book about it that I've posted. It drives me apeshit. They are not kids. They're just younger. And not always younger. I have a couple of people who are in like their 40s in my classes. So let's just stop this game where they're like children. They're not children. They're college age students, right? And I think that when I give them the respect of treating them like adults, they own what they're doing more. And that ownership makes them handle it better because they're owning it. It's their struggle. It's their stuff to deal with. It's not for Mitch. It's for themselves. I think that's actually insanely important. And it's all very subtle how I do that. But I think that's something that I'm conscious of. Like I want the students to buy their own education, not to make Mitch happy. That is the least important part of what they're doing. So I think that's really important. I try to do stuff like I don't keep students. If the class goes till 11 and we're done at 9, we're done at 9. We go home, we're done. I'm not making students sit there for no reason. I see a couple of former students here, including Destiny, and I know Destiny will nod her head that she's been in classes with me where we were like met for 20 minutes and we were done. Not because I'm lazy, although I am, but not because I'm lazy, because we were done. We didn't need to talk anymore. So do you want to sit here while I like awkwardly walk behind you for 2 hours, or do you want to go do your shit on your own time? I think they want to be on their own time. So I think that providing that ownership is like crazy, crazy important. They are really understanding, oh, this is for me to do, not for a teacher to hand me what I need. This is on me to gather and really learn. And so I think when they have that understanding and then they own it, it's almost like less stressful because it's theirs, it's not mine. And then beyond that, just treating people with respect, just basic human, like I try not to belittle people. I try not to I will tease a little bit, but I try not to really call people out in a really negative way in the front of class, stuff like that. I'll talk to them privately. I think just stuff like that, just basic human 101 kind of stuff, because they're students, but I'm a student too. So I don't see, how do I say this intelligently? I don't see the separation that is there as much as others do. I don't see myself as othered from the students. I'm not this like upper thing and they're this lower thing. We're all in it. Like I do this diagram on day one that's like a circle, and it's like, this is this class. It is not me and all of you. It is us. And they're all like, yeah. Like I've heard that before from every teacher says that. But when they start really understanding I'm not joking and it's like very serious, I think that helps a lot. And I think they buy it. And I do a lot of stuff where I try to have critiques where students are not just one at a time, 20 people in a row, which is like the world's worst crit, a big giant group. So I do lots of little groups, one-on-ones. I have them do speed dates where they pair up for 15 minutes and then change partners. And for a lot of these crits, I am not there. Like I'm in the room. Often I'm physically not in the room. I will literally leave. Again, because I want them to own the education. I want them to understand you're not critting because I said so. You're critting because you need feedback. Mm-hmm. You're in a review right now because you need to make your stuff better, not because Mitch said we're critting today. And I think me sort of very gently sort of disappearing when they're talking to each other, I think actually helps. And again, I think some students think I'm just a shitty teacher, but I think most of them understand, oh, he's calculating this. Like this isn't casual. Like he's doing this for a reason. And I do it and I tell them straight up, like I am doing this intentionally because you need to deal with your own feedback. It's not about me. So I think it's all of that stuff. Ultimately, I think it will get slightly easier-ish over time as COVID again becomes kind of a non-thing or just a condition we live with that isn't, it's a thing. But we're in a rough patch right now. And I mean, we teachers and students, it is a very challenging reality right now. Thank God. I'm happy to talk to y'all on Zoom, but thank God I am not teaching on Zoom anymore. That was not good. Not my forte, despite me being amazing right now. Not my forte. I do not like teaching on Zoom. It was very challenging. So I'm really glad that's hopefully over with for now. So yeah, good question. Yeah, I'm just kind of yammering, but that's
and Destiny says, do you still have students grade their own project?
Destiny, did you do that with me at all? Yeah.
Yeah, we graded our own projects. I don't know if that was like ultimately the grade we got, but it was a good chance for us to like reflect on our own work and like think about what we actually deserved.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, Destiny is like a superstar rock star student. So she's awesome. Yeah. So the grading themselves thing is really interesting. I think the thing that I suck the most at as a teacher is grading. Okay. I am extremely bad at grading. It seems very simple. You have parameters. You tell the students what the parameters are. They either did it or they didn't. If they did it, it's an A. If they didn't, it's a D, right? You know, it seems very clear. It is so not clear to me. I think a single letter grade, I understand it's an abstraction. It's just a bullshit idea to me that that's what you got. Oh, you did a B? Why? Well, because of this. Well, really? But couldn't that be an A? Like, it's all abstract. This is not science. Like, this is opinion. There are virtually no facts in art and design. There's principles, there's established guidelines, but I would be hesitant to call a lot of it factual. So it's a lot of opinion. And so my opinion, you got to be, is not the answer a student really wants to hear necessarily, even if it's a good opinion. So what Destiny experienced, and I've tried a few versions of this, is I say to the students, like, I'm not grading you. I'm going to give you a very clear understanding of like how I break down the grades, process, products, you know, kind of attendance, engagement. I'm going to give you a 1 to 10 scale, not an A to F, because A, B, C, D, F is loaded, whereas 7 is 7. It's not loaded the same way. And I say to them, this is not a mind game about like you guessing what I think you should get. This is you being honest and just telling me where you think you're at. Don't lie. It doesn't accomplish anything if you lie. If you think you're getting an A, but you're doing D level work, you're going to get a D. Like, I'm going to give you a D. You can't get out of doing badly in this class by grading yourselves. Similarly, if you think you're doing C work, but you're doing an A, you're going to get an A. I'm not going to let you sort of belittle yourself. But what it does, and I still haven't dialed it in yet, but it seems to make the students actually think about what they did. Not, did I do that? Cool. But like really think and like really sit down and say, okay, how did I really handle this project? And what I have found over and over and over again is students always grade more harshly than I would. Always, every single time. Almost nobody has been like a C and given themselves an A. Very, very rare. Frankly, the students who do that are not awesome students to start with. It's just that that kind of person tends to not be a great student. Most students are doing, whatever, 7, 8, 9, but they're giving themselves 4, 5, 6. And so I find that actually really fascinating. And what I have gleaned from that, I hope correctly, is that students want to be called on their shit. If a student sucks, the student doesn't want to get away with getting an A. The student wants you to say as a teacher, this is a C project or a D project. They want that. And it makes perfect sense. Of course they want that. They want to go do this for a living. Don't they want to be more awesome? Yeah, they do want to be more awesome. So me saying, yeah, that's an A when it's a D doesn't make them more awesome. It makes them suck more. And so, of course, they want to be honest. They want real feedback. They want real grades. But the instant you say to a student, you got a D, that look on their face is so excruciating. So like instantly they don't want it, but they do want that real feedback. And so that's something, it seems so obvious, right? Like no shit. It took me a decade to understand that. More than a decade to be like, oh, so if you did a D, you want me to give you a D. You don't want me to go, yeah, that's an A, And it seems so like, no shit, dude. It took me forever to understand that. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know how successful the grading themselves thing is. I've tried it last semester. It was sort of somewhat okay-ish. I'm still not sure I've kind of nailed what that looks like yet. But it's an interesting idea, and I do encourage other educators to try it if they can. And if anybody ever wants me to share with you my sheet for that, please don't hesitate to message me. I'm happy to share whatever you want. I have no problem with that stuff. So yeah, I'm still working on it. I don't know. I think it's something there. Like I think there's something there. I haven't quite gotten it yet.
Excellent.
Maybe one day.
And what classes are you currently teaching?
So this semester I'm teaching graphic design capstone. Which Destiny, were you 2020? So Destiny, yeah, you were the COVID year.
Yep.
So lucky Destiny got to graduate on Zoom. So we're sorry about that. And so I'm teaching graphic design capstone. The reason I ask is Destiny was in that capstone class. And for that capstone class, after many years of not doing this, we finally got a gallery space. After decades of not having a real show, we just kind of would do a one-day thing. I finally got a gallery space and then we got COVID. And so that was completely destroyed. This year, I got another gallery space again for the first time. And this will actually happen. Like, hopefully we will have an actual final exhibition. And so that's been a great to do. So capstone is super interesting. It's really like 42 independent studies, essentially. That's super interesting. I'm teaching on 2D 2, which is the second half of 2D design 2. And this semester, I am focusing it primarily on failure. I've decided to theme the semester. And with the help of another colleague, this guy, David Schnuckel, who teaches in Glass at RIT, he did a whole lecture, a whole series of stuff on failure. And I've been chatting with him and he was gracious enough to share some stuff with me. So we're focusing kind of on failing and breaking rules and screwing up in a way that I hope will be good, maybe not. And then the other thing I'm teaching is Motion 2, which is sort of a newer class that is kind of, I'm going to use animation in a very loose way. It's not literally like characters animating, but sort of working with kinetics and things like that. And that's proving to be a really interesting class as well. I think I have a good group of students in that class. I think that will probably, hopefully, rock fairly hard. Might crash and burn. First time I'm teaching a class, I always allow myself one bad semester when it's a brand new class, but I'm into it. I think it's going to be a good class. So it's shaping up to be a great semester so far.
Excellent. And then there's another comment. So you mentioned failure. What are some intangible things, non-directly design related skills that you hope students carry with them into their careers?
I mean, there's so much. I think it's about, how do I say that? That's a really good question. I hope that they can understand that, yes, they're working with clients. They are sort of heading towards outcomes and deliverables and sort of tangible objects they will get paid to make, either from the agency they work at or the in-house they work at or the client they have. And that is clearly a very important part of professional practice as a designer. But I hope they're understanding design can be like an approach almost, or a lens. I think I've said that before in some interviews. that it's a way of looking at the world and sort of processing the world. And so that's a really hard thing to like teach a student to care about. It's like, I don't know if I'm successful at it, but that's kind of what I have eventually developed. When somebody says, oh, you're a designer, I say, yeah, I guess. There's, oh, you're an artist. And I'm like, well, I get, it's like they're just kind of words that don't mean anything. And so for me, what I'm hoping I can teach them, and again, it's hard, is that sort of ambiguity of process and the ambiguity of the journey to the outcome. And that's the fun part. And that doesn't mean every single client you have or every position you have is going to be this like free for all meta, processy game. Sometimes it's like, get it done. This is due in 6 hours. And that's also fine. But I'm hoping that they can understand that they're sort of gathering, like translating and mushing stuff together in their head and then spitting it back out in ways that are really interesting. And I've always said that I think design is translation. Like, I think that's what when somebody says, what do you do? I say, I translate, and I translate ideas from clients into physical form. I translate my own interests into sort of visual output. Sometimes that output is furniture. Sometimes it's graphic design. Sometimes it's Twitter. Sometimes it's apparently a book. And so I want to understand, I hope I want students to walk away understanding, oh, okay, this isn't just like I know how to kern type. Like, it's so much beefier than that. That doesn't mean that going into the office at 9 o'clock, working for 8 hours, going home at 5, and seeing your family and your kids isn't also awesome. That is also awesome. That is equally awesome to making giant multi-million-dollar projects. It doesn't have to save the world or change the planet to be good design. But having said that, my interest area is obviously a lot deeper. It's down the rabbit hole more. And I'm hoping I can get students to kind of say, oh, okay, I get how this could get more interesting or more of a down, under the water line for the rest of the iceberg, basically. Doesn't mean that going up here at the top is bad. It's fine. For me personally, that deeper dive is more interesting. And if students want to take that dive, I'm hoping I'm giving them what they need to at least try to do that a little bit. Sometimes more successfully than others. But I think in general, that's my hope, is that this abstract weirdness of this field can be super interesting and really enjoyable to kind of play around with.
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm going to say that's my answer. Yeah, I'm going to stick with that.
Mitch, I was wondering, did you enjoy writing the book? Do you think you would do another one?
Oh my God.
I was going to ask that as well.
That's a really difficult question to answer. Yeah, okay. Did I enjoy writing? No. I enjoyed having written a lot. I actually hate writing. I love having written enormously, and that's what keeps me going, right? So the only way I got the book done was, again, after, and I'm being funny, but I'm not being that funny, like literally like rewatching Breaking Bad, alphabetizing my books by like author, country of birth, like anything I could find to like distract myself. I finally sat down and I sort of did the math. I had a word goal, about 30,000 words. And I was like, how many words can I realistically do in a week or in a day? And eventually I sort of initially said I could do 1,000 words a week, no problem. Like 1,000 words a week is not that much. It's like 6 tweets or 5 tweets. Like, it's not that many words. No, that's characters. Never mind. It's not that much. 1,000 words is, 6 or 8 paragraphs, 5 or 6 paragraphs. Like, it's a very doable amount. The reality is I could do it in an afternoon if I would just sit down and focus. But for me, focusing is very difficult. So I started out by giving me a weekly goal. And then, of course, that would mean that Sunday night at 10 o'clock, I would start writing to hit my weekly goal. And I'm like, this is not going to work. And eventually what I got to was sort of, I think it was like 500 words a day. I think that was what I sort of landed on for the last like 8 months of the book. If I can bang out 500 words a day, I will physically accumulate an amount of words that would be in this book. It might not be good, but it would go there. I also read Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird, which anybody who's writing anything, you should buy that book instantaneously. And she has this amazing bit on shitty first drafts. It's actually her term is shitty first drafts. And reading that really helped because I was like, oh, this can suck first. Oh, I get it. I'm not actually writing the book. I'm writing a really crappy book that I will then refine into something hopefully more better over time. And when I did that, I was like, oh, okay, so this is a lot less pressure than I realized, like I can do that. And so I would bang out 500 words, some of which I look back and go, dude, what were you doing? Like, what were you thinking? Like, this doesn't even make sense. Like, this doesn't even make sense as a statement of English language, never mind what you're even talking about. But over time, I kind of got there. And so I got to tell you, holding this in my hand, like, obviously you guys are like, oh, he's excited. Like, I can't comprehend this as a real thing. Like, I'm not being funny. I don't understand how this exists. How did they let me do this? Like, how did they put out the time and the money to do this? But obviously they did. So I would definitely do another book, but only if something I care about. And that's kind of what I landed on finally, was doing another book because somebody says, oh, let's write another book. What do you want to do a book on? I'm not going to do a book on something I don't care about because it is torturous to do it. It is torturous. And so I will love to write another book on something that really matters. And I don't know what that is yet. I have lots of stuff that matters, but I don't know how those gelatinize into a book. But I don't think this is the last book. I guess we'll see how this book goes over. It might be the last book. Assuming it goes over reasonably decently, I'm definitely into doing more, but it's got to be something that matters. It's really got to be. I don't ever see myself doing like an academic text of any kind. I don't think that's who I am. Stuff with like lots of footnotes and examples of other art and design is, again, probably not something that I'm really going to do. But I think sort of essays or thoughts or reflections, I think, are something I'd be into. I kind of am interested in toxic mythologies of art and design, which is a term I've sort of used before on Twitter, but I think there's a lot there. All the sort of toxic myths that we sort of tell ourselves that are honestly just awful for everybody, clients and designers as well. I don't know. Maybe that's a thing. Maybe that's down the road. We'll let's get this one out first and sort of see kind of where we're at.
And as you were writing the book, are there any writers that you like? I know you mentioned Anne Lamott or anyone else.
Yeah. So my reading habit is all like junk thriller science fiction, like dumb shit, like Michael Crichton. I've been known to pick up a John Grisham on occasion. That's what I read. Like, I'm really not reading academic books all day. I tend to consume a little more through video and visual. So I do watch a ton of like essays and podcasts, but I don't read a whole lot of nonfiction. I mostly read fiction. So I don't know if I have favorite writers. I have people whose voices I really admire. Like, I think a big influence on me was Paul Sarr. I always mispronounce Paul's name. He's a designer out of New York City, been around forever, book design, book covers, lots of stuff. He's done tons of stuff. Just a really, I would say, prolific designer. And what I love about Paul is there is like zero bullshit with Paul. Like, if you hear Paul talk, he actually did a talk a while ago that was only showing his screw ups. Like, he showed no, quote, good work at all. It was all the bad work. And I was like, wow, like, yes, thank you. That's what I want to see. I've already seen your good stuff. I want to know about what didn't work. And so I really admire Paul. Natalia Ilyin is an author. She wrote, oh my God, I'm going to blank on her book. Chasing the Perfect is this really interesting book about sort of modernism. She is an amazing design writer. I really love Alexandra Lang, is another brilliant design writer. I think her stuff is great. Jarrett Fuller, who did the foreword to my book. I love how he writes as well. I really like a lot of the stuff from Design Observer, sort of the latter stuff from Michael Beirut and Jessica Heflin is really interesting. I mean, there's names. I could just rattle off names all day. I'm not like a book fetishist guy. Like, I don't have like a book writing god person that I really like love, but I admire so many people. I think for me, the people I probably most admire are probably Nancy Skolos and Tom Waddell, who were my teachers and mentors at RISD when I was there. And they've written two to three books. I know there's two, there might be a third, a number of books that are more than one. And not only are they incredible human beings, not only were they teachers, I hope one day to be as good as they are as educators, they're absolutely brilliant, transcendently good designers. Like, I think their work is so mind-numbingly awesome. I can't process it all the time. It's so good. And they've written books, and I'm lucky enough to be friends with them. So I saw that process and saw the struggles and how it went down. And so I'm really lucky that I've got people like that I can sort of talk to and touch and sort of poke at and say, hey, what do you, does this make sense, or blah, blah, blah. So again, I know I'm excluding like 90 people that I should be listing, but like, my apologies to you if you're being irritated I didn't say your name. But yeah, I kind of, I don't know, I wrote somebody said, oh, you're a writer. And I'm like, well, I wrote a book. And they're like, yeah, that's a writer. And I'm like, are you sure that's a writer? Like, I don't know if I'm a writer. I wrote, like I have written, and I guess I'm allowed to say I'm an author, but I'm not sure that words, despite how much I talk, is really kind of my forte exactly. You see me, like I'm kind of manic and a little all over the place. Like that's just kind of how I roll. And so I don't know. Yeah, I'm just kind of yammering now. I'll stop. That's a good question. Yeah, I don't know. There's people out there doing awesome stuff though. I do know that.
And Destiny asked if your students have been expressing any interest in your book.
They have. Now, maybe if you get an A, it's possible they're doing it just for a grade. But yeah, everybody, I'm sure there are people I'm like, oh, I wrote a book. They're like, great. And then they turn around and go, who gives a shit? That's fine. But most people are really hyped about it. Everybody on campus is really excited. I gave out my gift copies of the books to certain people who've been very supportive. And so they got those today. And so people are going to start reading it kind of now, and we'll see how that goes over. But crazy supportive, super, super supportive. RIT has been amazing. I got a sabbatical for a semester to help finish the book. I'm doing a book launch event at RIT on March 7th. We're going to do like a talk on stage. So they've been incredible. Teachers, faculty, the students, staff, admin, all been really super into it, which is great. So I'm feeling very supported and very like they're like hyped that it's going.
Excellent. I love it. I definitely can't wait to read the book.
I cannot wait for people to start letting me know what they think that aren't my close friends. My close friends are like, this is great. And I'm like, well, thank you, but I would hope you would say that. But like, what do other people kind of think? So we shall find out.
So we're almost at time. But I do want to just open it up. If anyone else has any questions, to just by all means unmute yourself.
Yeah, please do.
Chat.
This is when we all awkwardly stare at the chat window for a minute. Nothing shows up.
I have one last question, and it's about inspiration.
Sure.
Because I know inspiration is really important for designers, and I think there's just so many ways to be inspired today, and a lot of those ways just tends to be through things like social media. And I know that that you speak a lot about inspiration. So how do you go about teaching inspiration to design students? How do you teach them to look and to be observers?
Good question. I do have thoughts on this topic. I don't believe in inspiration. I think it's a bullshit idea. Okay. I don't believe it. I think we say inspiration, what we really mean is reference and context and sort of seeing inside somebody else's brain a little bit at how they approached something. I don't like the term inspiration. There's lots of reasons why I don't like it. I don't think it's accurate. You're not really being inspired. When people are like, I have to do a logo for whatever, a swimming team, and I'm going to now go onto Google and say swim team logos and look at 7,000 logos or swim teams, and then I'm going to make a logo having processed all of that. That isn't inspiration. That's a shortcut to being done. That's not inspiring. Here's a whole bunch of ways other people did it. Pick the 3 or 4 you like and sort of mush them together. And that's kind of what I have found. So I don't really think that's inspiration. I think that's a pre-thought solution. And those of you who know me know I very rarely use the word problem and solution when I talk. It's something that really makes me cringe. So I don't believe in inspiration. I believe in gathering references, experiencing both the world as the world itself, reading books that aren't about logos, that aren't about InDesign, that aren't about typography, reading books about art, music, theater, performance art, cooking, anything, right? And when you sort of absorb that stuff. It, again, kind of like before, it kind of goes in your brain, it bounces around. It's like a weird little mosh pit in there. And then a couple of things connect and click, and then you output an idea. I would call that process inspiration. But again, I don't think inspiration is really the word. You're just processing the world, translating it into a new thing. That I think is insanely important and is 1,000,000% a lot of what we do. But like, oh, I got to do a magazine about BMX biking. Let me go Google BMX biking. That is bullshit. That is a great way to make mediocre, predictable work. Some people want mediocre, predictable work. That is fine. Take your paycheck. It's no problem. You're totally legit. You're still a designer. Obviously, I think we could exist at it's sort of a little bit more of an interesting place than that. And so when students talk about inspiration, I'm like, no, you are not getting inspired. Inspiration comes, the only place I think it comes from is when you make a thing, you look at the thing, you say, that did or did not work. Oh, but I could do this thing next. That to me is inspiration. So I think inspiration comes from you. And I think reference and context comes from everywhere else.
Yeah.
But I think most people think the opposite of that. So maybe that's me just manipulating the English language in a way for my own nefarious end goal. But that's how I look at it. And so I don't want my students reading design books. Like I really don't. There are amazing design books out there and there's amazing design out there. I want you going to a play. I want you like taking a walk in a place you haven't walked before. To me, that is more inspiring than picking up the big book of 10 million logos or whatever the book is. A lot of people don't agree with me on that one. I get a lot of flack about that, but I think it's so crazy, freakishly important to understand that as translators, the more we get in, the more we can put out in ways that are appropriate and interesting and valuable and engaging versus predictable and kind of been there, done that. So that's, again, I'm not saying I'm correct. I mean, I believe I'm right, but I'm not saying that's like the law, but that is my own approach. And I have found when I'm like, I got to do a thing, let me go look at how other people did that thing. I make the most mediocre crap I make. And I've made vast amounts of mediocre crap. So I'm speaking from experience. But when I really just kind of like process the world and let it kind of just sort of ferment in there, that's when stuff comes and gets really interesting. And I think learning how to do that, it's so hard. Constantly trying to teach that, still haven't gotten there. Maybe one day. I think I kind of touch it here and there, but really difficult to kind of, without like saying to a student, no, do this. Like you don't want to do that, but like having them kind of learn, oh, okay, I can sort of like process stuff and come out of it the other end with stuff that's actually a little bit more interesting, a little more exciting than maybe if I just kind of Googled the thing I've got to do.
Yeah.
So that's, again, I mean, you'd have to ask Destiny if like that's legit or not. I think it's good. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely your freshman year projects are what stuck with me throughout my career.
Sweet. I'll take it. Destiny, I'm not paying to be here, by the way. She's just here. Yeah. Totally coincidental. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. So if there's no other questions, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule and spending the evening with us.
Oh, I love it. Anytime. And y'all, if you want to ask me something, shoot me a message. Like I'm very open. I might be like, I can't talk to you for a week. Like, don't be pissed because I am a little buried right now, but I'm more than happy to chat. If you're an educator and you want some resources or whatever, just shoot me a mail. I'm totally available, happy to talk. If I ignore you, it's not because I'm ignoring you. I'm just fried. Like, don't read into it. I'm just a little overwhelmed right now.
And I do want to add that I was mentioning this to you before our talk here, but I think it was like 2016. I discovered you on the internet and I reached out to you, and I never thought you would ever respond. But I was like, "Hey, Mitch, I love what you do, and I'd like to get some feedback on my portfolio because I'm graduating." And you sent me a long email where you like pretty much like looked through everything on my portfolio, and like gave me really thorough feedback. And I've never forgotten that. And that's something that I'm inspired to do like in my own practice and sort of give back to people that sometimes reach out to me. So you planted that seed. So,
oh yeah, I'm glad. Yeah. I mean, like I said to you before we started talking, like if somebody cares about what I think enough to find a way to contact me to ask, hell yeah, I'm gonna like answer. Like I might be like, look, I'm really fried. Can I find you in August? Which might not be that useful, but I'm not gonna be like, screw you. How dare you take my time? Like that's like chapter 3 in the toxic bullshit book. Like no. Hell yeah, I'm happy to talk to you. Of course I want to talk to you. You want to know what I think about your work? Me, this putz, this schmuck. Absolutely. Of course I'll talk to you about it. Like I'm more than happy to. So I appreciate you even remembering that. Like, thank you for even realizing, like, I don't remember exactly, but I obviously, I saw your name and I'm like, oh yeah, Christian. I remember Christian, So like, thank you so much for that. It's really, I think teaching, I've said it 1,000 times, it's the greatest job in the world. I'm not doing it because I'm getting rich, because I'm definitely not getting rich, but everything else about it is incredible. And so somebody wants to engage me in sort of an educational dialogue. Hell yes. Hell yes, I am.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
All
And
right.
we'll be in touch, and everyone, please go buy his book.
Yeah, really. In fact, you should probably buy 10. I think that maybe giving these as stocking stuffers are good. If you have a table that's uneven, you could like put the leg, that's fine, whatever. Still buys a copy, that's good.
There's a link
But
in the-
yeah, it's available everywhere. It'll be out March 7th.
And then this is being recorded, so it will be published on our YouTube page. So I'll make sure to send that out to the people that came. So
Awesome. And I will share it as well.
awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much,
All right.
Mitch. And thank you everyone for participating. And
Thank you, Christian. Thanks, everybody. Great to see everybody.
Thank you.
Good to see some of you again. Some of you for the first time as
Congratulations
well.
on your book. Good luck.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day. Good night, whatever. Bye.